Hello everybody, welcome to Know Your Money. I'm Bronwyn Wayner.
And I'm Craig Finch, and we are from Growth Financial Planning. We hope you enjoy our podcast.
Hello everybody, hello Bronwyn. Very lucky to have Tamryn Lamb from Allan Gray in the studio.
Thanks,
welcome
Craig,
Tamryn.
Bronwyn.
Thanks so much for making the time and effort. Come all the way from Cape Town.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
And you're head of
so
retail,
much.
which is a massive job at Allan Gray. And Allan Gray are
Well, it keeps me busy.
And you're a really important partner in our business, our practice, and we've engaged with you for many years now. And we really enjoy the platform net, so we would love to have you here.
Yeah, and we value that partnership. So thank you for the trust and confidence that places in us.
Yeah, so who is Allan Gray? What is Allan Gray?
So Allan Gray is an investment management and administration business. So what we do is we offer two main services to clients. Our history was started off just offering investment management. It was in 1973. And at the time, our style of investing was quite different to what you saw in the market. And we were long-term oriented, focused on valuations, building portfolios that look quite different to the benchmark. And we're called Allan Gray after our founder, who was an individual, a man, named Allan Gray, grew up in the Eastern Cape, studied in SA, but then actually went to Harvard. And actually, when he applied to Harvard, in his application form, they said, well, why should we take you? And he said, well, because I want to introduce professional asset management in South Africa. So he went to Harvard, worked at Fidelity, and then came back and started Allan Gray. And so for the first almost 25 years or so of our history, we were largely an institutional kind of business, so institutional clients and pension funds. And then we expanded to offer our services more broadly to advisors such as yourselves and obviously your end clients. And then in 2005, we launched an investment platform, and that's our administration business. And really, it's just that we offer our own funds alongside offerings from other managers. And it creates a nice sort of single point of contact, for you to administer your client's entire portfolio rather than having to go to individual platforms to do it. So that's who we are and why we're called Allan Gray.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that is a question we often get with clients when we say we're using Allan Gray as the provider. Then they assume that everything is in Allan Gray. But what you're basically explaining to everybody is you're just the provider and they can have any funds on there.
Yeah.
And we tend to use Allan Gray as the provider because they have everything done right and their main focus is the client and the best for them. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about
what's unique about? You've got a unique structure as well.
So maybe before I talk about how we structure the business, I'll go back to that point. And Allan had this view right from the very beginning that, handing over your money to someone as a client requires trust and faith and confidence. And so as a business, you have to do everything you can to build trust and confidence. And because that's the only way you can get clients to stay throughout the cycle. And what is one way of doing that is making sure that you put service sort of front and kind of foremost. And so we do invest a lot in our service proposition to yourselves and to your clients because we think that helps, ease what can sometimes feel like a volatile journey. And then we try and make your guys' lives easier by, you can have one view of your clients' portfolios. But yes, as you say, they could be invested via the platform, but not in an Allan Gray fund. And it's a pretty competitive market. And our people often ask us why we're different. And, normally the typical response is, we've got a unique investment philosophy and we've got great people and our track record and process. And all of those things are true. We're all proud of them, but if I told you we buy low and kind of sell high, that's not going to sound particularly unique. I mean, what asset manager is going to tell you they do the reverse? So if I were to say what's actually quite different about us is the way that we're structured as a business, particularly our ownership structure. And it's actually when we think about ownership structures and you think about any financial service business, be it an asset manager or an insurer or an advisor, it is important that structure, supports whatever strategy you've decided to kind of adopt, and that's your vision. And for us, It's to create long-term wealth for clients and to help in that process. And if we are long-term oriented, we believe in the power of time arbitrage. You need to have long-term owners and owners who kind of share that mindset. And that's why we've always been privately owned. And that ownership structure, what else is it supposed to do? It needs to make sure that when you're at your worst time as a business, so your failure point, does the ownership structure stand up and help protect you at that point? And if I think at one of the worst periods in our history, it was probably the late 90s when we were underperforming because we didn't have any of the tech shares. And while we went on to subsequently outperform a year later, we lost close to 70% of our business. And that's after 25 years.
Wow.
Sure.
And it was only because we were privately owned and we had the shareholder that we do, which was then the Gray family, who took a very long-term mindset and were able to provide the buffer and the resilience to enable us to go through. Because often at that point, as a manager, you can capitulate and then end up doing the wrong thing for your clients. And then one is sort of interesting extension of that ownership structure now. So we've always been privately owned, but in 2015, which was, then almost kind of 40 years into our history, Allan and his family, Allan and Jill Gray, Jill was his wife, they were finally able to execute on one other part of what was actually really more a personal vision from their perspective. Was, he had started out the business to make a difference to clients. And his view was, if he was successful in doing that and he put clients first and he geared the interests of the business to clients, then the firm would be successful. And then he had a decision, how must I structure, this business to ensure it endures indefinitely? And how can I make that difference that I'm making for clients? How can I potentially amplify that impact? And, as Allan Gray, the business, we can't really take credit for this decision that he then made. But I do feel proud of being part of an organization that has the structure. So what he did is previously the ownership was held in a series of family trusts. And in 2015, he transferred the majority of the family stakes into a foundation. And he had searched for almost 8 years to find this particular corporate structure. It's based in Guernsey, and it has a dual purpose. And the two purposes sit alongside each other. And the one is to be the perpetual owner of the asset management businesses and to allow us to continue to execute on our purpose, which is to, help clients create long-term wealth and financial security. And so that means, for us, it means we can never be sold because our majority owner is kind of enshrined in as the foundation. But then the second part was really their vision, and that was that their family's interests in the businesses, that the dividends from those stakes would be devoted exclusively to philanthropy. For me, what does that mean? It doesn't change actually what I do on a day-to-day basis. We're very commercial, we're very performance-oriented, we know we operate in a very competitive industry, and we're, my focus is to make a difference for clients like it is for you guys. And I'm sure, like for you guys, that gives me real meaning. And it's definitely one of the reasons I've stayed at Allan Gray. But it actually makes that meaning a little bit bigger for me, that I know that if we do a good job for clients, not only will clients be better off, but actually the fruits of that success will get, directed towards maybe making society a little bit better too. So it's not something we talk about too much because it's really what's important for clients and for you is that, our structure is solid and it's perpetual, and we think it's designed deliberately to help us do the right thing for your clients. But it does give us at Allan Gray a kind of, an additional sense of meaning that we know that, these dividends, the vast majority of our dividends are devoted towards, grants, towards like philanthropies we run. Or when I say we, the foundation, I shouldn't take credit for it. And then also just other initiatives that we think look like they are worthy of kind of directing the money towards, and it's all in the areas in which Allan Gray and Orbis operate.
But we saw that philanthropy presentation end of last year, and us as planners don't also realise the extent of how that is working. We were really so impressed, and I think maybe you should. I don't know. It's hard to blow your own trumpet about it, but it's a lovely way of knowing that, as you say, the fruits of the success are going to the right people and people who need it, startups and etc. We were really impressed by.
Yeah,
And I also think
it's something we're proud of, but we also want to say it's not a reason why you should almost invest with Allan Gray, but it is, it is an important part of who we are.
Yeah, that is.
And I think it just highlights that sense of purpose. For us, our clients are also so important to us, but the broader market and trying to make society better is the cornerstone of why we've started this podcast, because it's not only our clients that will listen to this, but it's other people that we may not be able to help, but they can just have some of that knowledge. And I think that's the same purpose with Allan Gray. Yes, you're trying to help your clients, but you're also trying to help society. And I think it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah. Certainly being able to lead a life where you feel like you're fulfilling your purpose is probably one of the most fulfilling things that one can do. And we 100% agree with the education aspect. I think even Allan is kind of also quoted as saying right from the 70s that it was less about selling your product, but more about ensuring that clients understood it. So active education and engagement with transparency and lots of communication is at the cornerstone of making sure that clients actually trust you when they need to.
Because that is the thing, is I think clients do trust financial planners, but they don't necessarily understand what they're trusting. And if you can educate them more so they are making that decision themselves.
Great.
But thank you so much.
Thanks, Tamryn. Thanks for the enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, would like to subscribe, please visit our website, www.growthfp.co.za. The information we have provided in this podcast is our personal opinion. For more detailed information, please discuss your financial situation with a financial planner.